So this research is really important because I think we're always looking for a how-to guide for resistance and for protest and for change and equity, but we don't necessarily prioritize the sustainability of those efforts or our joy and healing there within. So this research is trying to give people a sense of what is the joy, where can you find healing, where can you find community in spaces and places that institutions have told you you don't have access to. This work enriches my life because I get to do what I love and what I'm passionate about and share that passion and joy with people who are really just like trying to find a way out of no way, and finding the agency to put yourself first and really do things that cultivate self-love and self-care. We get on airplanes and think you have to put on your oxygen mask before you help others. And so I think finding those spaces and communities that are oxygen masks that do give us life and purpose is so important for us to be able to help other people and help our community.
It's important to do the research for the fellowship to inform the African American community, the bigger American community, and inform the African diaspora of what life is like for Black people in Indiana, and that it's not a monolithic story. It's not just a slavery enslavement story. These are free people of color who were early pioneers and settlers, and we often don't think about Black people in that way in America. The fellowship allows me freedom to go where I choose to go and where the story and the paper trail and the oral histories take me. So I'm not limited to what I personally can afford or what my institution is willing to support in the endeavor to do further research.
It's important to conduct this research because my project's centered around Etheridge Knight, the late poet. And there seems to be a resurgence of interest in Etheridge. He died in 1991. And the question is often asked, why is his legacy still going? Why are we still interested in his work? Etheridge started writing poems while incarcerated, and he was a Korean vet and was in Indiana State Prison in the late 60s, and that's where he started writing his poetry. And about 10-15 years ago, I approached the Arts Council of Indianapolis and asked, how could we get a mural of Etheridge Knight? And the response was something to the effect of, the city would never approve of a mural for, a convict, someone who had a known drug addiction, etc. And so I think the fact that 10 years later, not only do we have our mural, but the mayor of Indianapolis came and dedicated June 20th as Etheridge Knight Day in Indianapolis, shows how far we've come. And so I just want to continue the momentum, right, that we have right now. And so I'm working on a collection of essays, interviews, and some letters that will be published by University of Michigan Press on Etheridge. And so I think it's important for us to, continue to honor his work, not just as the poet, the successful poet that he was, but as a community organizer. He was known for his Free People's Workshops that he would give to community members, and also to hopefully inspire others to look at some of the other poets and artists from his circles in his life that that the city has to offer. Well, as a poet myself and as a scholar, the thing that I'm finding most enriching is the research itself has me visiting the archives, both at Butler University and at the University of Toledo, and also the Indiana Historical Society, and getting to read some of the personal letters to family members, to other poets, to publishers, and letters that he got from elementary school children when he would visit schools, and it's just been very fulfilling to see a poet not just writing poems, but a poet who was out in the community reaching children and adults in academia as well as outside of academia. And so that's inspiring to see someone who was truly a part of the community, right, and was not just serving students in a classroom setting.
Most people, when it comes to sewers, they run it down the kitchen drain, they flush the handle in the toilet, and it's out of their world. They don't think about where it goes, what it impacts, who it impacts. And Indianapolis is coming up on the end of a 20-year, $2+ billion project on the sewer system, to clean up the sewer system, to clean up the waterways. And the question I have is, number one, will the African American community actually get what they were promised, what they need? And the reason I state it that way is that one of the reasons we went through this exercise is that the sewage was washing out in the African American neighborhoods, and had been doing so for decades. But no one paid attention, even when people complained and questioned it. Finally, when the federal courts got involved and started to push cleaning up the waterways, and that we were actually violating federal law with what we were doing, there were a lot of promises made. There were a lot of money was spent. But will we actually clean this up to the level that it's supposed to be and what was promised? I'm not too sure. I was there when this started 20-some years ago, and now here I am at the end of this process, still wondering where we're going to be, how this is going to work out. I'll hold my judgment until it's done, but I'm very curious to find out what this is going to look like. I think the fellowship is actually benefiting in getting to know other people in the outside of the circles I would normally be in. People are asking me, what is your project? How did you get involved in this? What does it mean? And a lot of people their eyebrows are raised when I tell them. It's like, we had never thought of that. We've never heard of this. Yeah, we want to know the answer to the questions you're asking. That's a good point. So when you're looking at this large academic question like I am, there are a lot of moving parts, and people want to understand, how did we get to this point? And if we really are going to get what was promised. There's one thing to read it in the newspaper, and there's another thing to hear it from the politicians. But actually to hear it from people who are not in the decision-making process and not in the everyday news reporting process, I think makes a difference in allowing, and being involved in this project has allowed me to actually meet people who are not in those streams, but are interested.
I think the history of Black mothering exists in so many places, whether it's the Historical Society or in newspaper archives or people's photo albums in their basements, but it hasn't necessarily been collected in an intentional and careful way. And I think that so much of what I know about Black mothering here in Indiana has been so focused on like the horror stories, the statistics that say this or that or the other, and it's just disconnected from actual living histories, family histories. And I'm excited to celebrate people, celebrate our survival through kind of a shared and collected history. Well, I am, I've been an independent, I'll say, like a community-funded, community-supported writer and artist, facilitator. This is my first time doing research and work of this magnitude, in part because there's not a lot of investment, I think, in individuals doing this kind of work. So it's exciting, I think, to sharpen my skills as a community engager, as a storyteller, as someone who I think I exist just outside of so many kind of disciplines, I guess. And so I'm like a Venn diagram, and it's really cool to bring so many things that I'm interested in and care a lot about to this project, and tell the stories that are grounded in research in a way that actually reaches people, that honors, I think, who we are as a Black community here in Indiana.
This research is important because the long history of archives has largely been white, male, straight, cisgendered, and it's important to share stories of diversity in the archives. And this is just one of the projects that I've been able to work on, is telling the stories of Black students at Indiana University that had to do their student teaching at Crispus Attucks, and kind of navigating the story of the segregation of student teaching at Indiana University. So I am a new Hoosier, and I've been able to learn a lot more about Indiana's history and the people at Indiana University that are documented at the Indiana University archives. And this means a lot to me because I've been able to connect with community members and tell the stories of their ancestors that maybe they haven't heard before. So a lot of this research means a lot to me because I'm able to connect more people to the archives and be able to share the stories of their ancestors.